Hey there, guitar fanatics. Welcome back or welcome to the channel, whichever the case may be. You know, if you're going to reach your potential as a soloist on the guitar, one of the things that you have to be working on is fluency, which is the ability to play whatever you want, wherever you are on the guitar neck without getting lost or having to think about the right notes to play. You know, as guitarists, we tend to learn things as patterns or boxes kind of in isolation, and we don't necessarily practice moving them around and integrating as much as we should. I spend a lot of my time trying to come up with innovative exercises to help you with your facility and mastery of the fretboard so that you can reach a level of automaticity, which is nothing more than being able to do something without having to think consciously about it. And this video is all about that. In this video, we're going to play through major scales and seventh arpeggios in several keys in the same position in such a way that it's going to challenge your mind and get your fingers moving. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, put on your guitar playing hats, and let's do this. So the exercises in this video are maybe a little more complex than the ones that I have been showing you. As I said, we're going to be playing through seventh arpeggios, different inversions, and different keys, and major scales that match those arpeggios when we do that in the same position. Now, if you're not familiar with those concepts, hang in there. There's going to be plenty of diagrams to follow along with. If you are familiar with those concepts, I still think this is going to be presented in such a way that you're going to find it fun and really challenging. Whatever you do, don't miss the second half of the video, because that's when things get really interesting and really great for your playing. Some quick theory behind what we're going to get into today. Now, I just did a video on harmonizing the major scale. If you haven't watched it, you can find it here. The major scale has 7 degrees or notes. You can build a triad or a 7th chord off each one of those degrees. Now, when we build out these 7th chords, we can get a major 7th, we can get minor 7th, we can get dominant 7th, and we can get minor 7 flat 5, which is something we're not going to be spending any time on today. Each of these chords, of course, can be played as arpeggios. Each one has 4 notes. The major 7th arpeggio is made up of the root, the major 3rd, the perfect 5th, and the major 7th. Now, we can play through different inversions of arpeggios, and all that means is that we're going to start the arpeggio on a root other than the root note, and then we play through it sequentially from there. Having 4 notes, 7th arpeggios have a root form and then 3 inversions. The root form obviously starts on the root. The first inversion starts on the 3rd, the second inversion starts on the 5th, the third inversion starts on the 7th. Now, I remember when I was learning these, and I would spend a lot of time going up and down the neck playing all the inversions of the same arpeggio, like this. Well, not today. Today, we're going to take one note, in this case, the E note at the 12th fret of the low E string, and we're going to play through inversions of 4 different arpeggios based on the function of that E note in each respective arpeggio. Let me show you what I mean. So the E note is obviously the root of an E major 7th arpeggio. And the notes of E major 7 are E, that's our root. We've got G sharp as our major 3rd. We've got B as the 5th. And then we've got D sharp is our major 7th. So here at the 12th fret, check out this 6-string E major 7th form. So the E note can also function as one of the 4 notes of 3 other major 7th arpeggios. So it's a root in E major 7, but E is the major 3rd of C. So the notes of that first inversion, C major 7th, here at the 12th fret, we've got E, G, B is our major 7th, and then C. Here is a C major first inversion form at the 12th fret. E also functions as the fifth in an A major seventh arpeggio. So here at the 12th fret, we'd have E. This is second inversion, that's our fifth. G sharp is the major seventh. A is our root, and C sharp is our major third. So here's our sixth string A major seven at the 12th fret. This is the second inversion. So lastly, E is the major seventh and would be the starting point of a third inversion F major seventh arpeggio. So here at the 12th fret, we would have E, F, there's our root, A is our major third, C is our fifth, here's our arpeggio shape. So the real purpose of this part of the exercise is to get you familiar with the way that one note, in this case the E note, functions as 4 different degrees in 4 different arpeggios. Also, I wanted to get you familiar with some 6-string major 7th arpeggio shapes. Maybe those are some shapes with which you're not familiar. Here are a few variations on this part of the exercise. And we can play through each of the 4 arpeggios, ascending and descending, for instance. We could play through one arpeggio ascending, switch to the next arpeggio descending. So for instance, we could play through E major 7th, ascending, and C major 7th descending. We could switch up the order and descend first. For instance, descend through E major 7, ascend through C major 7, descend through A major 7, and then ascend through F major 7. So now we've got major 7 6-string shapes for all 4 arpeggio inversions. Let's get some shapes starting with the E on the 5th string also. That's at the 7th fret. So we've got E, G sharp, B, and D sharp. That is our E major 7th root form. C major 7, that would be our first inversion, so we'd have E, G, B, and C. A major 7, second inversion, we've got E, which is the 5th. We've got G sharp, which is our major 7th. A, which would be the root. And then F sharp, which is our major 3rd. And then lastly, the third inversion of F major 7, we'd have E. F is our root. We'd have A, major 3rd, and then C is the 5th. So what are we learning here? Other than some cool arpeggio shapes, what you should be learning is how a single note functions through 4 different arpeggios. The same note can play many different roles if we change keys, or even if we stay in the same key but play it over different chords. Every note functions as the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and the 7th of some 7th arpeggio. Let's move on to the second half of our exercise, and things are going to get really interesting. So in the second half of this exercise, we're going to be playing the matching major scale for each of the 4 major 7th arpeggios that we've been playing. What we're going to do is ascend through our arpeggio until we get to the second note that we play on the high E string. So with our E major 7, we play up to the G sharp at the 16th fret. Then we're going to shift to the A at the 17th fret, and we're going to descend through E major. Until we're back at our E note at the 12th fret of the low E string. And we're going to do that with each of our arpeggios and each of their respective corresponding major scales. So we're familiar now with the 4 major 7th arpeggios that contain an E note. That would be E major 7, C major 7, A major 7, and F major 7. So our next task is finding the notes of the major scales that correspond with each of our arpeggios. Something you may be wondering about is, how do you find the right notes? We're going to be playing backwards from an A on the high E string to an E on the low E string. There's a whole bunch of strings and notes in between. Now, if we were to only think about the E note as the root note for each one of those scales, we'd be getting into Joe Satriani pitch axis kind of a situation, where we've essentially got a bunch of modes with E as the root. And while that's probably a great subject for another video, I want you thinking of each individual scale, E major, C major, A major, and F major, with E being a scale degree for each of those scales. Now, conceptually, this is where things can get a little tricky, and it's where I see a lot of students put up roadblocks when it comes to the modes. And the purpose of this video is not to do a deep dive into modes, but I do want to make the point. I want you thinking of the notes of each of our 4 respective major scales. So back to guitar playing. Let's hit that E major 7th arpeggio. We're going to make that little shift up into the A note at the 17th fret of the high E string, and then we're going to play backwards through the E major scale. Now, repeat that as many times as you need to get comfortable with it. You may be unfamiliar with the arpeggio. You may be unfamiliar with playing the major scale, so it might be something you're going to have to practice. That's great. That's okay. Now, our next arpeggio, as you remembered, was our first inversion, C major 7. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to ascend through our arpeggio, but then we're going to descend down through the C major scale. Remember, no sharps or flats in the key of C. It sounds like this. Next, we've got A major 7, A major. Lastly, we've got our F major 7, the F major scale. Remember, there's a B flat in there. I want you to practice each one of those until you've got it down and it's smooth. The next part of the exercise would be to start combining them, playing them back to back. So I know this is a lot to get into your brain and under your fingers, but once you start to get comfortable with playing the shapes, I'm going to challenge you to do it along with some sort of a timekeeping mechanism, a metronome, a drum track, whatever. It just so happens with the number of notes being played with the 6-string arpeggios and the scales, it works out great to play triplets. Start off slowly. I know from personal experience that you think you've got something down, but when you start to play it along with a click, it all falls apart. But playing with time helps you ingrain this stuff much more deeply. And hey, we're playing music. Music's played to a beat, so you're going to have to get used to it anyway. You can also play straight 8th or 16th notes. When I do that, I'll double up on the low E at the 12th fret, where the scale and the arpeggio meet and you start over. It just seems to kind of work out, help the flow a little better. If you want to get really crazy, you can do a back-to-back switch. You could play up the E major, say, in 16th notes and down through your scale. When you get to C, play it triplets. And the same thing with the A and the D. That's a lot of fun. It's challenging. Really dig in, practice this stuff till you own it, and it's going to pay off for you. So, can we do these same exercises with our 5-string arpeggio shapes? Well, we not only can, we're going to. With these arpeggios, we're going to be starting at the E at the 7th fret of the A string. And we're going to play up until we get to the notes on the high E string. And we're going to shift to the E at the 12th fret, and we're going to descend through the respective major scale that matches our arpeggio. Now remember, as we go through these scales and we go back to our E, we could think of it as 4 modes, all with an E root, and that would be, again, that pitch axis type of theory. but I want you thinking of the notes of 4 respective major scales. I think it's hugely valuable that you learn to play scales from the roots, to recognize the notes of different scales on the fly. And if you can start to do that, your fretboard knowledge is just going to skyrocket. Starting off with our E major 7th, we're going to play through the arpeggio up to the D sharp note at the 11th fret of the high E string. Then we're going to shift up to the 12th fret with our pinky. We're going to descend through the E major scale. Next is C major 7. We're going to play up to the C note at the 8th fret. We did a shift with the index finger that time from the 7th fret to the 8th fret, puts us in a great spot to descend through C major from the 12th fret high E. Next up is A major 7. We're going to play up to the C sharp note at the 9th fret of the high E string, then we're going to descend through A major. Last but not least, we've got F major 7. We're going to play up to the C note at the 8th fret of the high E. We're going to descend through F major. Don't forget the B flat. And there's our 4 arpeggios and major scales. Once you get these under your fingers, of course, I'm going to ask you to play them with a click and mix up your subdivisions, just as before. I would also tell you to play both the 6-string versions and the 5-string versions, starting at every fret on the neck until you run out of frets in one direction or another. When you do that, it always changes things when you start from a different point. The frets are spaced differently, the strings are spaced differently, the fret markers change so you don't have the visuals to get comfortable with. It's just a great way to practice. And again, you might think you've got it down, but from personal experience, I know that you'll be playing with people and they'll call something out in some strange key. You try a lick that you've been learning, and again, it falls apart just because it's in a different spot on the neck. So practice this stuff until you really own it. You know, these kinds of exercises are challenging. They reveal holes in your knowledge, holes in your playing, and that can be a little bit painful. However, it's great for developing your fluency or automaticity, which is my word of the day. Watch for upcoming videos. We're going to take this same concept, use the same major 7th arpeggios, but go through Lydian mode. We're going to play dominant 7th arpeggios, go through Mixolydian mode, and then get into minor 7th, and there's multiple modes that we can use in conjunction with our minor 7th arpeggios. As always, a sincere thank you for your support. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel. You keep practicing, I'm going to keep making videos that are going to help you make sense of soloing. I'm out for now.